was. Let's focus on this side now.
Sorry, what do these buttons do underneath there?
We're affecting a group
Like
of fixtures
these.
right now. You
Oh,
can grab an individual.
yes. So mute, select, select is select, so it just makes the channel active on the screen. Mix is going to come into play once we start talking about mixes here. PAFL is just pre or after fader listen. Listening to the channel as a whole.
That's your solo button, basically?
Yeah.
It also makes the RTA show.
Because it's an Thank you.
All right. This screen just does input processing. This screen has a bunch of different functions. So all the settings that you would configure for the engine, all the preferences, all of that is done here. Your shows, your snapshots, everything else is done here. I/O routing. Let's just talk through these things in order, then we'll get down to this. Meters. You can look at a bunch of different meter views. Find one that's helpful to you. You can create your own. You can also just look at the RTA for specific things at a time. So if you wanted to see a big RTA here, opposed to just here, you can see that.
At what point do we need to
All right. This may be a good place to live during a show. You have your scenes right here. We'll talk about scenes in a minute.
And so you're going to record a cue.
You can also change this function here to view input meters
Presets and then record a cue. So everything you do is record.
I guess maybe this is
or output meters.
if I get to this point and it's patriotic, I'm like, I've messed up. I don't like it. How would I
All right. Effects. This is where we can go through our effects processors and dial them in one at a time. We can also change the routing if we wanted to jack up the routing to where it's not one-to-one. We can go to the back panel and it's being fed from Stereo FX1 bus going out in a different area. But right now it's an insert in that. I don't recommend messing with that, just leave it as is. If you wanted to get squirrely, you could, but I would just go ahead and add another effects processor. We'll talk about effects a little bit more in a little bit. I/O. Inputs and outputs is what it's short for. So this is where we can do all routing for all things of the console. We'll look at inputs, for instance. We can see the inputs per channel, processing channel, how that corresponds to physical inputs on the mix rack. So there's the mix rack back there, local I/O. That's where we can say the kick in is plugged into input 1 on the mix rack. In order to patch, we have to push and hold the patch button. It's in patch mode, and then we can touch a cross point. You can also zoom in. I recommend if you're making changes, just to line up. Like say if I know that it's input 7, it needs to go down to the channel 14, then it's, really just having to line up one axis. So it's easier. All right, DX, that is a form of digital audio as an expander. Right now there's one DX output box, and that's in the video control room. You don't have to worry about that so much. It's physically located, it's coming off of this console, off of the surface. But you can have DX stage boxes or additional stage racks that would be routed from here. You don't have to worry about those, you don't have them. I/O port the same way. When the Dante card comes in, it's going to be in I/O port 1. So if you wanted to route things from the Dante card to a channel, processing channel, this is where you do that. All right, surface. If there's physical things plugged into the surface, this is where we can go and look at, say the little smart was located here, Spotify is coming in on an AES feed. There, 9 and 10 on the local surface. All right, USB, this is where you can tell what goes to the USB and where the USB is playing back out. The top one.
Yeah, oh, the top one.
Yep.
When would you use that, the USB?
Really just for a quick way to track your recording, your 2-track.
Just plug in
I brought a Zoom recorder. I'm probably gonna just for today just plug into that just to get a recording of practice.
Okay, cool.
All right, there's outputs. So this is where we can send these outputs to places. So like the IEM is going to the mix rack output, physical output 1 through blah. That's where we change that. All right. There's input, direct outputs. So the focus of this is if we wanted to send an input directly to an output without going through any kind of processing channel whatsoever, we can do that here. Where that comes in handy is Dante card. Once that's there, we can send these inputs straight to the Dante card to be tracked.
Just get a dry mix, just a dry input.
It's coming after the gain and that's it.
Love it.
Nice. So you can do a playback and then
That's how
compress it, figure out how to EQ it.
That's right.
Nice.
That's how we do virtual sound check. Yeah, because it's recording the raw video, the raw signal. You can take that and do whatever you want with it for multi-tracks, or you can play it back into the system. And then you can mix back however you need. And it's just like the person we're playing on the stage.
Yeah, we did some training on that early on, but we haven't used that much. We should use it more.
All right. Rack effects, if we wanted to send these different places, and the solo, if we wanted to send the solo to a physical output so you could listen to it with like a monitor IEM, that's how we do that. All right. Mix external ends. Don't mess with that. So that's where you can feed a mix with like an insert. You don't want to do it. No need. Exactly. Tie lines. Okay. Brain explosion. I'm just going to cover this really quickly. A tie line, the whole purpose of a tie line is say, hey, I wanted to get this, an input that's on the console straight out to my DX box that's in video. Well, I could do that. I could take a mix rack local input, tie lines, local, it swaps them now, so it's a little confusing. Mix rack local in one, I want to send it to the Surface DX5 output blah. The console doesn't care about it. It's not processing it at all. It's just sending that channel.
Taking a cable, plugging in there, going to the back room and plugging in there, back there.
Exactly right.
Okay.
This is really handy when you have like digital splits.
When would we need that?
Never. For you guys, never. In some instances, we have, front of house desk, monitor desk, where we need to get a Talkback that's plugged into the engine at front of house over to monitors. This is where we'd use a tie line. And then virtual sound check. It's already configured. So this is where we'll send it to the Dante card when we're in virtual sound check, or it's inactive, so it's sending out audio, and then we just switch to virtual sound check and it pulls it all back without, that's just a one button press to virtual sound check.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a game changer.
The Dante card has 64 channels, the Wave card has 128 channels at 96K. So depends on which one we use, we'll change that number. Alrighty, we know everything about I/O now. We're pros at it. Scenes. Oh boy, let's come back. Ganging. So the purpose of you have 16 groups, where basically what this does is you can gang parameters of channels, the entire channel, whatever functions of that channel, you can gang those together. So what you would do is drag down, say if I wanted just because this is an example from earlier, the kick one, whoops, I just want the fader to be mirrored with the other kick.
Yeah, and it might be in a menu.
I can do the fader and the mute. Now, apply.
Can you patch the lamp output as a fixture?
They're tied together.
So it's kind of like binding in a software.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
All right.
That's great.
So that
Can you
was,
adjust your
setting
ratios
in-
inside
we
that
didn't get into
game?
a lot of the
Yes, because we don't have trim or gain, anything else in this besides fader and mute. So basically, if we wanted an EQ to track between this and this, then we could link those EQs to channels. Okay, we're going to take those back out, apply. They're unlinked again. All right, mix rack. Don't worry about this so much. The only things that are important here is this is where you can change talkback settings, but you can also change talkback settings with this button. There's one thing that we did with the talkback. So there's 3 different buttons we configured for talkback. Talkback MD, just to the music director. So you can,
to be drums today.
yeah. So we can push in that latches. So we're talking back to just the drums. Or talk back to all, and it's going to all of those. And then there's a third group, so if we needed to talk back to somebody special, we could say, okay, we just need to talk to the spare.
Problem child.
This is not your permanent console.
Yep, we have to go to assign,
Same software, same
talk back group 3 to the spare, and then now we're back to select.
You no longer have to push that button
has-
on the
it has more
talkback
universal
mic
inputs
anymore.
than-
This is lit up. It's listening. Yeah.
You might have to get them on the audio.
Cool.
Yeah.
So the audio
Alrighty, Rudy. Surface, this is where we do preferences and whatnot. We can change where channels go. This is an advanced feature, but I want you guys to know it exists. Strip assign. Say if we wanted these two to be flipped. You're talking about acoustic 1 and acoustic 2. I can take these channels and flip them. I can take it off, say I don't need acoustic 1. Goes away. Everything's virtual. So the processing channels are happening all back there. This is just an iPad. We're telling them where those processing channels go to the iPad, if you will.
Anyway, okay.
So we'll fix it back.
When you do that, it still keeps all
The grouping.
the grouping, but also like the effects, the EQing, all that stuff stays there.
That's right. You could essentially have a channel that's up in the mix that's nowhere on your surface. That's why I want you to know that exists. Now, you shouldn't have to change that much, if ever, because we accounted for every I/O that you may ever need,
Yeah.
and we brought it to the surface.
And we also talked through when you're deciding who's. This is just a thing we talked about that I thought was useful. In that we used to move, resort those things around based on where they were on stage. Now, the way Chris recommended is we look at the stage layout and we say, okay, it's going to be Rochelle, Michaela, Stephanie. Then just put them in order on which mics you give them. So Rochelle gets 5, or Rochelle gets 4, Michaela gets 5. You just put them in order that way so that when you select their group, they're in order on the board as well.
Yeah.
So the removing the channels around, we're trying to get away from it.
So that's a weighted topic, right? Because there's more that comes to that. So there's a thing called DCA Spill, and there's a little button for it. So if that button's enabled, if I push mix for drums, it brings all the drums over to here. And now I can mix my drums. Yeah, bass, guitars, same thing. So that still exists.
And that's the mix button, not the select. Yeah.
So do we like that? Are we changing our processes?
No, I think I think we, unless you see a reason to not do that.
I think it's great. If you're hunting and pecking for something real quick, it saves you from having to go and look through all these different things. You're like, oh, I need to get to the drums and I need to mess with those real quick. Let's just pull the mix over.
So you're saying do use that?
Yeah. Now, there's some reasons where you don't need to have this on. If that's off, this doesn't work. Like it doesn't, the DCA Spill doesn't work. So this has to be on for that to work.
The countdown's not up. I'm like, I won, I can't.
Cool. All right. Shows. This is where we save everything about the console. So think about shows. This is where we're about to get in the scenes. Shows are I'm here at this event, or I have this concert, I have this band. This is a show. And then, for instance, I'm taking this exact same console somewhere else, different I/O, different everything, different preferences. That's a different show. All right. You can even bring shows in to say I have Night of Worship. That's going to be a show where I have all kinds of different I/O that's patched different from a normal Sunday morning. All right. That's a show. I may have different preferences for however we want to mix that night or how it needs to be set up. So that's a different show. So think about shows that way. All right. And then scenes are theatrical. I have this part of the show, this part of the show, this part of the show. I need these 7 people on stage for this part. I need these 12 people on stage for this part at these levels. So then I can cycle through my scenes, and that recall scope can be narrowed down to even just like the fader. So it's just moving the fader for those scenes. It can do everything about the console, like EQs, aux ins, aux levels. It can do all that stuff, or it can just do faders, as much as we simplify it down to. So let's go ahead and we'll take that, we'll overwrite that, and yes. And we're going to do an express version of scenes real quick, and then I want to cover this part of the console, and then we can come back to scenes if we have time.
Yeah, because we're going to want to start rehearsal very soon. Yeah.
Okay.
Are scenes like scene 1 be song 1, scene 2 song 2, then announcements?
Scene 2. Yeah, it could be song 1, announcements, song 2, 3. Yeah.
Exactly right. Yep. So we'll take one. We're going to call it intro or walk in. Apply crossfade time. It's going to fade 3 seconds. Over 3 seconds, it moves the faders.
How do you sorry.
You won't hear it.
Well,
Feel it. It'll just.
it changes it's a gradual change. Some crossfades you want to be like 2 seconds a little faster. Like if it's fast song to fast song, maybe it's a little faster. But if you're going from a big song into a ballad, or like even straight into a welcome, that may need to be a fast transition. All right, so then we'll take that. There is recall filter. This is where we'll do block all. It's recalling not a thing, except for faders, levels. That's all it's doing.
That's awesome.
That's all it's doing. Apply, walk in. All right, now we're going to do this. We're going to take this copy, paste, song 1.
For me, at least, I think only changing the fader level would be a good start. Because other than changing anything else. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Scenes hit announcements.
So you're hitting, and this is how you cycle through your scenes right here?
Yeah. So walk in, we have Spotify up. All right, we're gonna store. All right. Yep. And then for the intro, we have Rachel's doing the intro, these 3 vocals down, and Spotify is out. Store. Now what happens, the faders move instantly, but you'll see this bar indicating the fade time. So we're at walk in. Let's go ahead and recall it. Go. So this is walk in, pre-service music is there. All that jazz is there. I'll explain this in just a minute. I like to manually fade the band up. So I do that here and the vocal. So I'm not worried about them in my snapshot so much, besides the vocal mix that I have set here. So let's go ahead and we'll watch that fade time happen here. We're just gonna go on that one. Hold on a second, set up, auto, increment. All right. Let's go again. Go. Now it automatically goes to my next song.
Oh, go automatically goes to the next scene.
Yep. And now, as soon as I push go again, it's going into song 1 and fading. So it made my vocal changes. Yep. And it brought my music down over that 3 seconds. And in that portion, I faded the band up and the vocals up. Cool. Scenes. There you go.
until we feel comfortable with scenes, you don't have to use them.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah.
If it's just faders, it's not going to tell you, mess you up too bad. I like to leave mutes out because I kind of use mutes as like a safe, like so I don't catch the pastor in the bathroom or something, that type of thing, All right, cool. Route, we can select the channel, choose that channel. We can tell it what groups it's in. We can tell it where it's going. So
Okay, that's where you set up your grouping.
That's right.
For these
That's
DCA
right.
groups.
That's right. So that's where that channel is going to drums and bass and drum smash. Cool. Now I'm actually going to do something different. I'm taking this kick out of drums and bass, leaving it in drum smash. No, I'm taking it out of drum smash too, because I don't want it to engage either of those groups. I want to leave those raw because those are my low freak that I'm really using for punch. For like big bottom end, and that typically just wears out my compressor. Like that's my compressor engages off of that, and that's it. So I'm taking those out of that group compression. Anyways, that's how I do the routing for that. Yeah, it's auto applied.
This isn't.
But now,
Since we set our scene to only the fader, this isn't applying to song 1, right? Because that's what we're currently on song 1.
no,
Okay. That's still scoped to just the fader.
yeah, it's still scoped to just the fader, so it's not going to change any of this stuff. All right, back out of routing, outputs. How these are laid out are DCAs. DCAs are groups, basically changing all of the faders at the same time for you. We have drums, bass, guitar, keys, tracks, band, vocals, vocal effects. So the one that's new here for you guys is band. Here's how I use this. So if you don't like it and you want to have, bring up all your, okay. I have 3 fingers. That's about as many things as my brain can process at one time. For music transitions, I'm writing these 2 and bringing in verb. So those are the things I'm thinking about. Controlling my energy in the room, my band, overall band volume, and vocals, and then I can bring verb in. So say the welcome comes in, I'm coming out of the walk-in, straight into the band is vamping on stage. I'm bringing the band up. As soon as somebody needs to speak, I bring the vocal up. And then when they start singing, I can fade that vocal effects in. Trying to make my transition super easy.
The effects used to be tied to drum effects and vocal effects. Is that just vocal effects?
It's just vocal effects now? Yes. And you can set, so we have 3 different vocal effects. So it's a blend. There's a short verb, long verb, and then a delay. Delay is just an extension of the verb in this case. That's how it's configured. So, yeah. So per song, like if it's a rock song or whatever, we just want to fatten up the vocal, we'll use a short vocal with a little bit of long, and that's about it. Maybe a little bit of delay in it. Ballads, I may even swap it, have a bigger long verb, a little bit less short, just really sweeten that sound up. But this is all the vocals are going to that mix.
What's the delay currently set to? When you tapped it, was it 4?
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. So yeah, if you select these, it brings you right to the parameters.
Okay, sweet. That's how you tweak them.
Cool. Auxes. These are the feeds to their ears. We can adjust their ear mixes doing sends on faders by, let me explain what I did. I was in a mix and I wanted to get out of the mix, so I just hit home. Anytime you hit home, it takes you to bank A on both sides. All right, so anytime I want to adjust their mixes, I can do mix here and it goes to sends on faders. Or all these are quick buttons that are set up for all their in-ears so that I can stay on DCAs and mix, say the bass needs more bass. All right, let's go to bass. Let's give him more bass. I'm done. back out of that. So then I go back out to my.
Yeah.
You're not searching for a random color button to figure out whose mix is what.
So then there's the subs aux, and then there's the verb sends on faders. So right now all the vocal mics are going to the verbs, the long short verb and the long verb, and the delay. Nobody's going to the delay right now.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, you can't just have delay on the lead vocalist only.
Yeah.
Can you do
For now, that's sort of what we're leaning toward. Is
Right.
The reverbs we were doing before, we decided to not do what we were doing where we were switching the lead vocalists. We decided to leave everyone in the same reverbs and then just add delay to whoever we want to for that song.
For the most part, yes.
Is this where you would like, if you want delay on a certain word, you could just fade in and fade out kind of thing?
This is on the return.
Okay.
So the send, the effect sends are here. If I wanted to change, say, ride that for just a phrase, I could pull this down. This is the send. Pull it up before the phrase, and then choke it after the phrase.
So it catches just the words you want, and then
Yeah. But I would have to have that return up and hot in order for that to work.
So that's an advanced move.
Very advanced. All right, effects. So that's the auxes. Nothing on C. Effects returns. So these are all the returns, not just the 3 vocals, but it's the drum verb and the snare verb and the band verb. All right. Then there's the effect sends plus the group sends. Don't worry about these. The only reason why you'll need to go to these is if you want to change the processing that's happening on those groups. But that's going to be pretty much a set it and leave it type thing. Right now there's no processing being done on drums and bass, guitars and keys, or vocals. It's just drum smash, has a heavy compressor. I may dial in like a bus compressor on your vocals, just that way when they all start blaring, that it kind of brings them all down as a whole. You know, main outputs. This is the mains to the speakers, subs, and then the broadcast and the PCR feeds.
The subs are called Holy Spirit at the moment.
Yeah, it is. Holy Spirit.
what's PCR?
Production control room.
Okay, so if they need more volume, you can just. Okay.
And they have a volume knob on their table, but yeah, that's where they can change.
This would act like their gain.
That's right. And we can change their mix. Right now they're not getting any channels. They're just getting left-right. So you see, yeah, it actually shows you right there. You can see they're just getting the left-right feed. Cool.
Yeah, I was just thinking of
All right. Tab tempo. We've covered every button on the board. Good job, guys.
Rock on.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. Just in time at 2. They're about to start.
Amazing.